Well, it's E3 time, and I have to say, this year I really don't care, and I just can't devote 6 to 8 hours of my life watching all of these press conferences only to hear sort of corporate evangelism on products that probably won't come out for another 3 years. But what's interesting is that, kind of thinking about E3, the Project Scorpio announcement, and some stuff I've been reading online, even going back to CES, I kind of feel like the tech industry in general is becoming kind of complacent, kind of uninspired. And last year around this time, I talked about that with regard to computer monitors, and that actually was one of my more successful videos, so I think that touched a chord. But I think it goes, beyond just one product and sort of encompasses a lot of the stuff that we buy and that we are told is revolutionary. So since it's E3, let's start with gaming. And I think that the release of the PS4 Pro and now the announcement of Project Scorpio cements the fact that the 8th generation consoles were kind of soft launches or intermediary steps. They were marketed as new only because they needed to bring something to market back in 2013. And think about how disappointing these consoles are. If you look back to the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 launches, those consoles represented meaningful technology, whether it was, pushing gaming into the HD realm, or the PS3 kind of initiating a lot of Blu-ray adoption. Certainly for me, that's how I got into Blu-rays, which were a meaningful upgrade over DVDs. They made getting new TVs important and necessary. And yet, if you look at PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, they were struggling to hit 1080p 60. They didn't have the power to really push 4K adoption or UHD Blu-ray adoption. And so now we have these middle-of-the-road steps, and I got a PS4 Pro, and I like it. It's fine. It pairs nicely with my 4K TV, I guess. But it's not revolutionary, and it's not doing 4K 60. It's not even doing real 4K. It's that upscale checkerboarding thing. And again, it is a subtle upgrade, but an upgrade nonetheless. And now we have Project Scorpio, which looks impressive, sounds impressive. It has a nice price point. I guess they said today it was going to be about $500, which I think is reasonable for what they are offering. And will it get to 4K 60? I'm skeptical of that. Now, they claim that some of the Microsoft games will, but I just don't see how we're going to get smooth, true 4K gameplay when apparently you can't even get that consistently with a NVIDIA 1080 Ti. So I think that there's going to be some technical tricks, and hopefully it sort of spurs interest in Xbox, because Xbox has not had a meaningful release in quite some time. But again, it feels like just another incremental step until we finally get those consoles that could really drive these displays. And of course, you have Nintendo. I'm not going to rehash the whole Switch launch, but basically now, 3 months after the Switch came out, we have 2 exclusives, ARMS and 1-2-Switch, which I don't care about. I don't think a lot of people care about. And just lots of rehashed games. Yes, you had Zelda, and Zelda was an impressive game, but also on the Wii U. And you can't find these consoles anywhere. So, to me, not a lot of excitement surrounds the Switch until Christmas at the very earliest, really. And then, the conundrum of 4K of gaming and pushing 4K with gaming is that we don't have the hardware to drive these panels consistently. We can't get to that 60 frames per second gameplay, and we can't, in fact, even do it on consoles consistently at 1080p. So while we can produce televisions with more pixels, what is the point if you can't game on them? What is the point if there aren't a lot of there's not a lot of content out there? Yes, UHD Blu-ray is coming around. Yes, you can stream some 4K, but it's kind of a paltry selection compared to what we saw, again, with the launch of Blu-ray. So after 3D failed on these displays, I can't help but thinking why they decided to push 4K rather than saying, hey, we're not going to even talk about resolution for a while. We're going to release, we're going to develop OLED technology and release panels that combine OLED and HDR at 1080p. That way, games will look great. You could have the HDR in games, and you'll have this awesome new panel technology. And I look at my 4K television, and I look at my 1080p OLED, and there's no comparison. OLED, so much better. I don't care about HDR. The contrast on an OLED, to me, is more impressive than this kind of forced contrast that you have on my sort of middle-of-the-range 4K set. Take it to home theater. It's the same kind of laziness. It's the same kind of greed at play. I mean, we just had this introduction of Dolby Atmos after maybe 8 years of having really good surround with DTS MA 7.1. And Atmos is, it works. It's certainly impressive if you can install like the 11 speakers in the ceiling. Not many consumers can. But you know what? For $100, I got my Atmos-enabled speakers a couple months after I got my new receiver. And for $100, it adds a pleasant new dimension to movie watching. And that's fine. But yet, there are hardly any Blu-rays that have the Dolby Atmos or DTS:X soundtracks on them. I mean, they're encoded only into the UHD Blu-rays, apparently. So this great technology that we all upgraded to get, now you have to take that further upgrade just because it has to be associated with 4K, even though there's no technical reason why they can't pack it in to all of those Blu-rays. And even if you get the UHD Ultimate Edition that has the UHD disc, the Blu-ray disc, and the DVD, you can only get the object-based audio on the UHD disc, which is a pain in the ass. And finally, let's look at tablets and smartphones. These devices are impressive considering where they were 10 years ago. But let's face it, they've become commodity products. They've become things that we just, upgrade to, and yeah, the screens are a little bit bigger, they're more pixel dense, they're brighter. But really, for about 90% of users, one kind of newish device is just as good as any other. I mean, what do? You call, you text, you browse, you watch some YouTube. Most phones can do that without any issues. And I had a flagship phone for a while. I dropped down to a bargain phone just to reduce the size because I had one of those phablet things. It was just getting to be irritating. And unless I try to game or shoot video, I don't really notice the difference. And I think the even bigger issue that kind of ruins it for me is now that these tablets and smartphones have become social surveillance devices, to me there's no reason to consistently upgrade what is a spying device that sits in my pocket. You know what? When it breaks, if the screen cracks, if it's just slowing down after 4 or 5 years, yeah, I'll get a new one, but I don't consider this to be a piece of technology that I have this deep personal connection with or that excites me. It's a piece of technology that is, collecting all sorts of data on my behavior and sending it to God knows whom, for who knows what purpose or at what price, and it just doesn't excite me anymore. So I think what we have throughout all these different levels of technology is piecemeal progress that is always portrayed as evolutionary leaps. And you watch something like CES or you watch these E3 press conferences, and I don't know what the purpose is. These things aren't coming out in 3 months. These aren't things, what they're presenting isn't stuff that you can usually buy right away. CES is a little different, but certainly with E3, when do you think we're really getting Shenmue 3? You think it's going to be next year? I'm thinking 2019 at this point. So what these press conferences become are just kind of the secular gospel of newness that increasingly just obscures the avarice and the laziness that has beset the tech industry.